Yeah, like what comes up right now is the word conflict. And I feel like in general people see conflict as a negative word. uh,
Yep.
for me it's not. For me it's like the way I see conflict is like a bicep curl, you know, and it's like a
Yeah.
tension, and through that tension you grow stronger and something new emerges.
Totally.
But I'm just wondering how you see conflict, or how you understand conflict, or how conflict emerges in circling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the main thing is that it's kind of like, I think about it in terms of dissonance. Like there's part of relationship that's about synergy, and then there's a part of relationship that's about dissonance. I mean, that's the case everywhere. Like even you imagine, like in terms of evolution, if if conditions were perfect, there still would just be one little cells, right, going around, right? It wasn't until imperfections came in and tensions that, you know, evolution started to form. And I think that is just the way relationship is. So so I would say, like, the way I look at conflict is we refer to it as dissonance, right? And so, like, dissonance, I can talk about, like, dissonance between, like, dissonance I may imagine I'm seeing in you, like between different parts of you, like dissonance between, like, what I'm experiencing in myself and what is dissonant from what you're saying, right? And there's all these ways that we can just name the dissonance that we're experiencing, and then be open up to discover what it is. That's the main part, is to open to conflict, right? Is to proactively turn towards it. And this is where a lot of the communication, really understanding the grammar of openness and the structure of communication becomes important, especially if you're really triggered, right? Like, when you're really triggered, you usually don't have any desire to, like, open up to the other, right? Because it's a threat response. So, like, the opening up to novelty is not something that's going to be something that you feel like doing at the time. It's something you really have to gather in your own intentions. So having the vernacular, right, really down, really helps one kind of enact that intention in a place when they don't necessarily feel like it. So it's kind of like, rather than, I would say, in conflict, what I found to be the most essential thing, right, is to really make distinct between in some sense, the facts of what I see, hear, feel, taste, touch, and imagine, uncollapsing them from what I imagine the meaning of those facts are, right? So it's like you, maybe I heard you say something in a certain tone of voice, and I imagine that tone meant that you were making me wrong, right?
Is that so? Is that kind of
Yeah.
like separating observations from judgments? That's kind of the
Yep.
NVC thing, nonviolent
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting, because it's like, the more triggered you are, the more the world, like, the more the facts just look like your interpretations. So funny. Like,
Yeah, it's like I
so,
think it's called a refractory state. It's like when you're in the grips of a certain emotion, everything gets colored in that emotion, and your brain is just trying to it's trying to just, it's like a confirmation bias, like automatic confirmation bias, and it's everything. This is how it is. It's like a
yep.
naive realism, like whatever I'm feeling must be true.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's like, I think it has to do with, essentially, a threat response, right? Like, if I'm perceiving something as threatening, right? If out of survival, I want to not open up to more novelty. I want to reduce, right, the world to something manageable. And so it's funny. It's like, so if something that you say or a way that you say or whatever it is, all the billions of things that can upset me, right? You cross some boundary of mine that I don't even know that I have, let's say, and I'll become aware of that because I'll be upset. And one of the ways that we reduce novelty, right, is by becoming more and more certain about something. So our judgments, we can't tell the difference between my judgments of you or the situation, right, and my interpretation. They become kind of fused. So like in conflict, it becomes really essential to, even though you don't feel this, is to consciously look at your own experience and communicate in your own experience in a way where you name like what happened from your perspective, right? Like at the most basic level, it's like, okay, on Tuesday at 3:00, we had a meeting, and I noticed you came in at 3:04. And in that moment, I imagined that you didn't care about our project, you didn't care about me, and that you never will care about me. And then I started having all kinds of thoughts like that. And I felt angry. And I imagined underneath that, I felt sad. And underneath that, I probably felt afraid. Because as I'm saying this, I'm realizing what I'm really wanting is for this partnership together on this project to work, right? So like, now I was completely making up some hypothetical situation, but just simply like literally just doing that, I walked myself back to where I could kind of feel myself drop and open in my nervous system just now, just by articulating it like that. So if you notice, like what I said is I named the basic level of facts. And then I said this important phrase. And I imagined, right, that meant you being 4 minutes late. I imagined that meant that you didn't care about dun, 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 dun. And that imagine part is really important because it reminds us, right, how we feel and how things occur to us, right, as anybody does. And so, and then and then naming your emotions, right, in relationship to the meaning of that, right? That you can feel like all of that is about owning your own experience. But what's interesting is that, like, for the other person, you open up to the other person. Like the other person gets to see that, oh, like even though you're not blaming me, right? You're not blaming me, I'm impacting you, right? And if I can actually really see how I'm impacting you without feeling blamed by you, the more likely I am to really being in response and being affected by that, right? And really looking at myself in terms of that, right? And I can say like, oh, hearing that, I feel sad. I feel sad because I can see how much you care about what I mean to you. And I totally didn't realize that I was affecting you that way, or did I realize how much I meant to you, and now my heart's opening,